Hey, Taylor Ellwood here, and welcome back to the Magical Experiments podcast. Now, I have exciting news. First of all, next week I will be debuting the new season of me interviewing other occultists and magicians. I'll be interviewing Kelly Dawn about demonic sorcery, so keep your eyes peeled for that for next week. And what I want to talk about today is a question that was asked in the Magical Experiments Facebook group, which I thought was a really good one, which is the following. I'll just read it out loud to you guys. I see a lot of stories about all of those results people get and all, and I even have my own. But I've seen too few testimonials of people who've actually changed their lives in a deep and meaningful way. Don't get me wrong, it's awesome when we manifest the stuff we want, like a new job, peace of mind, material goods, better health, and all. But in the end of the day, are those actually solutions or mostly problem solving? I'm not being very eloquent with my words now, but I think you get the idea. Therefore, why do you think so few people out there get a life-changing experience with magic? And how could we be more aware in order to incline ourselves to such significant changes in the long run? Woo! That's a heavy question right there. I mean, I definitely get results. The house that I'm living in is an example of a material result that I got with magic. So I agree with him, a lot of what we do see out there are, stories about how people have used magic to get material results or something along those lines. One thing I want to kind of point out, though, is that a material result can be a life-changing result. For example, I didn't own this house until a few years ago. I did magical work to get this house into my life. It definitely changed my life. It was part of a life design work. And I've also done magical work where I've made changes in my lives and it hasn't been so positive. In a future episode, I'm going to talk about one such example around love magic and consent. And I've had magic done to me as well around those lines. So we'll explore that later. But I kind of get what the person's talking about. I mean, I'll use an example that I had, which was life changing for me, which is that at 20 years old, I was super depressed and unhappy most of the time. And I did a working where, using a combination of neo-shamanic techniques and meta-programming and connecting with neurotransmitters of spirits, I went in and I changed my brain chemistry. That was a life-changing experience for me because I no longer get depressed the way that I used to. I didn't have that biochemical depression occurring the way that it did before. And I mean, even now, at 47 going on 48, I can tell you, like, almost 28 years later, I still know what the difference feels like. And I'm not saying I don't get depressed occasionally, but it's not the same kind of depression that I used to have. So I know that magic can get life-changing results. Here's what I think about that question. I mean, first, yes, let's recognize that material results, and sometimes results as it applies to people and other things like that, can be life-changing. Like, those are life-changing results. And at the same time, I get it. Like, okay, a lot of times if I get a result, like to get a job or whatever else, that's great. It solves a problem. But is this changing my life in a really meaningful way? Am I changing my life proactively, or am I just responding to something, to the environment around me, and reactively changing things? And I get that question because I've thought about it a lot myself. Am I just changing in response to what's going on in my life? Well, first of all, I think we have to recognize that to some degree or another, there's always going to be an element of reaction to what we do. Now, it can be conscious reaction, and what I mean by that is that I consciously choose the outcome. I consciously choose the behavior. One of the reasons I've gotten into men's work, for example, is because I recognized that in a lot of ways, the way I was showing up in my life wasn't working for me, and that one of the things I needed to do was start unpacking the relationship that I had around my experiences with men and my experience being a man. So I started doing that work, and that's been life-changing for me. But that didn't necessarily involve doing any magic per se. But my approach to magic is one of ideally a life design working, where what I'm trying to ultimately do is design a better life for myself. And so part of that means that I have to get really clear on what my life ought to look like. And what does that mean? It's not just about material results. It's not just about having the house with the picket fence and, you know, the 2 cats and maybe someday somebody special who wants to be in my life. It's not about all the books that I've written, or although those play a certain role in things, or the classes that I teach, or the consulting that I offer. All that's very important. It's a way that helps me to maintain the life that I'm creating. It comes down to, like, what are your core values? Who are you showing up as a person? Like, how is it that you want your life to be? There's a point in time in my life, I think it was in the 1990s, early 2000s, it was the 1990s, where I had a realization that a lot of times I was doing magic to basically solve problems. Something would come up, and I would do magic as a way to solve a problem. But the issue that I found is that even though I was able to solve a problem with that magic, it didn't change the fact that I kept having problems. And at a certain point, I had to take a good hard look and recognize that I was playing a role in the problems that I was experiencing in my life. This is where we get into, like, radical responsibility, where the argument is you are responsible for the experiences and outcomes and things that you're having in your life, and you take radical responsibility. Like, you know, if you're in a situation where somebody's been mean to you, you say, okay, but I allowed that to happen. I take responsibility for the fact that I allowed that person to be mean to me and I didn't set good boundaries. That's an example of radical responsibility, as an example. And so we have to get clear, like, what are my core values? Like, if I don't like the direction my life is going in and I want magic to change my life, I have to figure out what I need to change within myself. And this goes back to something that I talk about a lot in magical work, which is really around the idea that, like, when we do magical work, we're not just changing the environment around us, we're also changing what is within us. And if we don't change who we are on the inside, then it doesn't matter what we manifest on the outside if it doesn't align with who we are. If there's some part of me that does not fundamentally align with the result that I've manifested, then that result will go out of my life. This is a really important point of awareness that I think we ought to consider carefully in our magical work and really in our lives in general. How am I showing up? Who do I really want to be? Is the person that I'm choosing to be, is that person fundamentally somebody I can live with, that I'm happy to be with? What I see happen with a lot of people is that they don't do the necessary internal work. And so they'll go and they'll live their lives and sometimes they'll live like a life of spiritual bypass. Like, somebody will say, well, the abundance of the universe naturally provides for me. Okay, what does that really mean? You know, what does it mean, when you say that, like, if you're still at the same time going to work at a job, or you're charging for a class, you're doing some of the other things that you're doing. Those are things that you want to be thinking about very carefully in relationship to who you are and what you do. So in my own magical work, one of the things that I really think about carefully is, like, is my identity aligning with the result that I want? Are the values that I'm espousing connecting with the result that I want? Am I living my life the way I want to live it? And that's where I think you see the life-changing results. We have to not just look at we don't have to just look at the material outcome. We have to look at the overall outcome holistically. And when we do that, this transforms the way that we relate to the world around us. It transforms the way we relate to each other, to ourselves, and it changes the course of our lives. So do I feel like that magic has brought some life-changing experiences? Yes. And let me be clear at the same time, that the point also isn't to try and live a life where you never have challenges or issues. I see so many people who get caught up in the idea like, if I could just have a life where I didn't have to deal with problems. We're all going to have to deal with problems sometime or another. You're going to have a bad day at work. You're going to get into a fight with your sweetheart. Yeah, you're going to have moments where you're struggling. The point, though, is to try and ideally make that less and less, with the acceptance that there's always going to be some element of that there. And it's also to really be able to handle it in a different way, to be able to handle it honestly and transparently and authentically. Like if I show up with honesty and transparency and authenticity in a way where people can trust who it is that I am and how I show up, that in and of itself is going to shape the direction of my life and the way that I show up. And I think a lot of times we don't look at that. You know, if your life's a mess, then you've got to look at like what is the one thing in common with all those messes, and that's usually yourself. And that means that, you know, you can do all the magic in the world and that's not going to solve your problem until you work on yourself. So if you want life-changing results, get clear on what you really want for your life. Get clear on the lifestyle that you want to have. Get clear on the results that you want to have. Get clear on what matters to you, and then go about and create it. But also recognize that when in getting that clarity, that you are also bringing change into your life. You're inviting it in. So get clear on the changes that you need to make to transform your life so you can become the best possible person you want to be. You want life-changing results, change who you are. And here's the interesting thing. The more you change yourself and the more you work on yourself, the less overt need you have for doing magic. I found that to be really true. And I'm not saying I still don't do magical workings and things like that. I do daily magic, in fact. But a lot of that daily magic has a lot more to do with just maintaining my overall sense of well-being in the way that I show up in the world. It's not about getting a specific outcome. It's about continually manifesting the overall life that I want to live. So hopefully that answers the question. And for those of you who are on here, take a moment and subscribe and like this video. Also, make sure you check out the forthcoming class that's starting on October 17th, Advanced Space-Time Magic. I'm offering it again. I offered it last year and people loved it. So make sure you're there for that because that is coming up shortly. All right, thank you for watching and have a great day.